Greetings and welcome to the AFS International week-long webinar series in celebration of International Education Week. You have joined us for the session, the Forum on Education Abroad's Keynote, Measuring the Career Impact of Education Abroad. Just a couple housekeeping notes. This is a webinar, so your camera and your microphone are closed, but you can still interact through the Q&A, which is enabled. You are also welcome to send questions to the hosts and the panelists on the chat. You can interact through the reactions. Closed captions are also available, and AI note-taking will be disabled and is not allowed. I mentioned earlier that this session is being recorded so that we can share back with others who are unable to join us at this time. As many of you might know, AFS is a global nonprofit organization focused on developing global citizens who contribute to a more peaceful, just, equitable, and sustainable world. We do that through international education programs, volunteerism, education resources, advocacy initiatives, such as this webinar series in celebration of International Ed Week. I am your session host. My name is Linda Stewart. I am the Director of Global Education Innovation at AFS International and also head of our Global Competence Certificate, which is currently celebrating its 10th year with over 20,000 certificate holders over the past decade. I have a particular interest myself personally in research and results and what it can mean for our field as we shape the future of global through mobility and virtual exchanges. So I'm very excited and looking forward to this session, my evening. I am also a product of a very successful study abroad program to Ecuador, which undoubtedly provided a foundational experience that has influenced my career path. Today, I am joined by two expert panelists, Ms. Melissa Torres, the Forum of Education Abroad's president and CEO, and someone who has 2 decades of experience in higher education and program development. She previously served as Vice President for Academic Programs at IES Abroad and Vice President of Institutional Relations for Academic Programs at Global Vision International. Her campus-based experience includes leading international initiatives for Brown University, the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, and the Ohio State University. Melissa was a founding member of the Business International Studies Network, Business Colloquium. She holds a master's degree in global education from the Ohio State University. And joining Melissa, also from the forum, is Dr. Amelia Diedrich, Senior Director for Research and Publications at the Forum on Education and Managing Editor for Frontiers, the interdisciplinary journal of study abroad. Previously, she taught Spanish and linguistics at Penn State University. As an educator, she has led groups abroad and mentored undergraduate research sojourns to Spain and to Sweden as part of the Forum's Future Nobel Laureates Hybrid Mobility Scholarship Program. Dr. Diedrich is an AFS alumna who did her high school exchange with AFS Intercultura in Italy. We are so excited to have both of you here with us today.
Thank you, Linda.
I'm just going to cover a couple of the themes that we will cover this evening, and then I'm going to turn it over to our speakers. The first theme will be about career outcomes. So through this, we will learn of the findings of the largest known career-focused survey of education abroad alumni to assess how the experience shaped their professional trajectories. We will also talk about salary data, comparative analysis from 4 flagship public universities that measured starting salaries for business majors who studied abroad versus those who did not. We will then cover economic impact, results from a new U.S.-focused economic impact study, including state-level data, demonstrating how education abroad adds tangible value for employers and for the economy. We'll talk about skills mapping, new projects mapping student experiences, like blog posts, with specific skills they develop while they are abroad. And lastly, we will discuss employer value, data gathered in partnership with NACE, NACE, on how employers truly value education abroad for talent and skill development, all because of the tremendous effort and initiative that the forum has put forward to these studies over the last several years. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to you, Melissa.
Thanks so much, Linda. It's such a pleasure to be speaking with you and the AFS community this evening. I'd like to really start by finding out who's in the room. So if it's okay, I'd like to invite our participants to take a short poll. And I think, thank you for launching that. So we'll give folks a minute or so to answer these questions.
There are 4 questions for the audience, and they are optional. So if you wish to not participate in one of them, you can skip to the next one. But as Melissa mentioned, we're really curious where you're based. What is the kind of category that you are identifying with? Like, what's your current role? Where do you work? How familiar you are with the forum? And then what are your greatest challenges when it comes to education abroad? And for that one, you're welcome to select as many as many of the challenges as you are currently experiencing that we put there.
Hopefully people don't have to select all of them. And Linda, I'll leave it to you to share the results when you think we're ready.
Okay. We have about 60%, so we'll just give it a couple more seconds here to see if others want to join in. Hopefully you're not having any difficulty seeing the poll. The chat is only open to the panelists, so if you're having any difficulty, just drop us a note in the chat. Okay. I would say that we can probably go ahead and publish the results. Great. Oh, we just had 2 more, so 1 second. It's kind of exciting when you see it going. All right. I'm going to go ahead and close the poll at this time and share the results.
Great. Thank you.
Good. I don't know if it's thinking. Can you see the results on your end? No?
Nope.
Okay. Yep. It's taking a little bit of time.
If we can't see them and you could just tell us, could it give us a...
Okay. I think we might have to do that. Okay. It's not letting me share. So who is in the audience and where are folks based? We have over 50% calling in from North America. We have the next category represented is Latin America and the Caribbean with 22%, followed by 19% from East Asia and the Pacific. And then we also have a couple individuals from South Asia and Sub-Saharan Africa. Nobody from Europe. Deep apologies. I know this is the least friendly time for Europe, but they participate in a lot of other sessions live. Then the next question is about how familiar you are with the Forum on Education Abroad. And here we have about 50% coming in at somewhat familiar, followed by 33% not familiar at all, and then just a handful very familiar. So that's good for us to know, Melissa.
Yeah.
And then what category people are calling in? The majority of people on the call tonight are students, identifying as students, closely followed by education abroad providers. And then we have higher ed and some nonprofits and a couple secondary school individuals. And then what are the greatest challenges? Oof, by far, blowing everybody else out of the water is, ready for it? Funding. Funding is the biggest challenge. Recruiting homestay families, the geopolitical environment, and recruiting students.
Thank you. It's good to know. It helps us customize our remarks. And just to share, I am based in North America, in the U.S., as is Amelia. I'm in the smallest state in the U.S., in Rhode Island, and very, very happy to be here tonight. I love the fact that we have people from all around the world in very different roles and different types of organizations, because I think that people who work in both secondary and post-secondary education and students too, we all face a lot of the same challenges, regardless of where we are in the higher ed ecosystem. And, as you just enumerated, those include funding, it includes supporting students, working with faculty, assessing learning outcomes and program value, and navigating a very complex geopolitical environment. And so those things affect us all. I think one of the major benefits of being part of the forum is to have a real sense of community. So when times get tough, you have people who understand exactly what you're going through and maybe have some good ideas to share or some things that didn't work for them, so that you don't have to experience the same challenges and issues. You can jump over, maybe leapfrog a little bit ahead by understanding their experience. I personally have been working in education abroad for about 25 years now, and I think today the times seem particularly challenging, but we have weathered a lot as a field, and I think if we all can work together and support each other, we'll be stronger than ever in the days and years ahead. We do face some new challenges, but I'm super confident, just as I was when I started working in this field, that we will adapt and we will meet the moment. So I think it's easy to feel isolated and to want to tune out the news or tune out the world. And the reality is we need each other now more than ever. I think educational systems must respond to the changing needs of an evolving geopolitical and economic landscape. And to do that effectively, it's critical that we look beyond our institution's doors and our campus borders to develop new alliances. One of our roles at the forum is to advocate for education abroad. And we do that through a variety of ways, but we want every student to have the opportunity to participate in an education abroad program, no matter where they're from or where they want to go. And that becomes trickier depending on the political environment. Here in the US, we wanted to give our members something that they can celebrate and share with their own stakeholders, regardless of the local political context in which they're operating. And I guess that's not just true in the US either, right? Like anyone who's involved in education abroad around the world has stakeholders and needs to be able to talk to them in the terms and with the data that are important to those stakeholders. So we settled on career impact and the career impact that education abroad has. And you might ask why, right? Most of us don't do this work thinking that career impact is the most important benefit from studying abroad, or maybe not the most important benefit of a college education either. But I think the truth is that it is an important benefit, and it's something that speaks to students. You students in the room can tell me if you don't care about jobs. I bet you do care about your jobs. It speaks to families, it speaks to campus leaders, to policymakers, and the private sector. Again, regardless of the political environment, right? and it contributes to an institution's efforts to demonstrate the value of a college education. So we wanted to have and to be able to provide data that talks about career impact that is useful across multiple stakeholders. And you can see on the screen, last spring, we launched the Career Catalyst campaign. And this is a field-wide campaign to showcase the career-defining impact of education abroad, how it equips students with real-world skills, professional agility, and a broader perspective that really sets them apart in the workforce. The campaign centers student voices, data-driven outcomes, and compelling stories that show how Ed Abroad helps professionals not only survive in today's evolving job market, but actually thrive. So before Amelia dives into the research that I know is the reason why we're all here tonight, I want to take a step back to introduce the forum. Let's see if I can get the remote to work here. Okay, so who are we? We are a nonprofit membership association. We have over 800 institutional members. They are across the United States and around the world. Some are institutions of higher ed. Actually, most are institutions of higher ed, but many are also Ed Abroad organizations like AFS and others that provide programs and partner with schools. Some of our members are affiliates who provide services to the field, such as insurance, travel insurance, or travel companies. We provide training and resources to education abroad professionals. So apart from the one student program that we have, the Future Nobel Laureates Scholarship, we really don't work directly with students. We're working with the people who are serving students. And so that's an important differentiation, I think, between the forum and the work that AFS does. Our mission is to cultivate educators who champion high-quality education abroad experiences that ignite curiosity, impact lives, and contribute to a better world. It's a pretty lofty mission, but we work hard every single day, and I don't think that that literally there's a day goes by that the forum team isn't thinking about how do we promote the highest quality programs to as many students as possible. We really believe and live our mission every day. As I mentioned, we provide training and events. We have a variety of events. I think at the end of the presentation, we'll share with you some upcoming events you may be interested in. We do consulting. We work with institutions in different countries to help build their capacity to host education abroad students. We provide a lot of networking opportunities. And maybe most importantly, we provide resources for the field. And one of those are the standards of good practice for education abroad. So we are recognized by the U.S. Department of Justice and the Federal Trade Commission as having the responsibility for setting standards for education abroad programs at the post-secondary level. So these standards, they're available free on our website, www.forumea.org. They specify the minimum requirements, quality indicators, and a framework for continuous improvement for education abroad and international mobility activities. They were created by an international network of professionals with consultation from the forum's team to create and regularly adapt these standards. U.S. universities and companies that are based in the U.S. Are supposed to manage their programs in accordance with these standards. And international partners of U.S. educational institutions often follow these standards because they provide a common language for partners to work together and to understand the expectations and the realities on the ground of what students can expect, what supports are available, why they're partnering together. The standards, if it's involved in education abroad, the standards are part of that and should be part of that. So they can be used. The standards are great for helping you understand what you should be doing, but how do you actually use them? Well, you can use them to guide your development of new programs, to evaluate the quality of your existing programs, to advocate for resources and support. So if you're at an institution and you need more support, you need more resources for things like health and safety, for example, the standards say there is a minimum that you must have. They can be used to help train new professionals in the field. Lots of people have begun their careers in education abroad in only the past few years post-pandemic. And so the standards are a great way for people who are new to the field to understand what their responsibilities are and what their organizations and institutions should be doing. They're also useful with parents and faculty and students who may not know education abroad as well as those of us who do this for our jobs. And so helping them understand what they should expect and what questions they should ask of their programs is a great use of the standards. And then this bullet point at the very end is one of the most important things, that the standards help institutions establish and maintain respectful, sustainable relationships between partners, so that a sending institution or a receiving institution is not completely at the whims of their partner, right? Like the standards say you must have respectful, sustainable partnerships. And that's really important to make sure that everyone is operating on the same page and that education abroad is beneficial for the communities that are involved, for the people who are creating and running these programs, and of course, for students and their families. So I think with that, I can turn it over to Amelia to dive into the research.
Thanks, Melissa, and thanks, Linda and AFS for having me here today. It's great. It's always great to be with an AFS audience. I am based, as Melissa said, also in the United States in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. But I call 3 other places sort of home in my heart as well, thanks to study abroad. So as a high school student, I was an AFS exchange student and studied in Italy. A few years later in college, I studied in Argentina, where I learned to speak Spanish. And thanks to that, I think it helped a lot in connecting with my husband, who's from Colombia, and I spend a lot of time there. So I see a lot of you in the chat saying hello who are based in Latin America. And so I wanted to take a moment to say hola and gracias for being here. It's really great to see you all and to be able to share what I've learned with you all. I am going to share with you the results of several studies that we've been working on, as Melissa outlined. Carolina, I'm having an issue with the control, and I need to go back a slide still. I'm going to share with you 4 studies that we've been working on at the Forum on Education Abroad that talk about different evidence that we have around career benefits of education abroad participation. And since many of you are students in this audience, it's really exciting to be helping you think through the ways that you can reflect on your own current, past, or future study abroad experiences, and how you might talk about how those experiences are impacting your employability or your career path moving forward. I think a lot of you have already found the Q&A, the question and answer button on the menu bar of your Zoom window. As I'm talking, if you have questions about the research I'm describing, please feel free to put your questions in the Q&A. After each research study that I describe, I'll pause for a moment and answer any questions about that study, and then I'll move on to the next study and do the same again, and so on. So let's get started. The first study I'll talk about is a study that we call the Talent Advantage, what study abroad alumni can do differently. And what we did is we worked with a group of researchers who collected blog posts online from students who were writing blogs about their study abroad experiences in real time while they were abroad doing study abroad. These were 79 students participating in all kinds of programs all around the world. And what we did is the blog posts were read and they were essentially coded or looked through to investigate patterns that are places where we're seeing students in what they're writing about their experiences indicate skills or competencies that align with what we know to be valuable competencies in today's global workplace. And so some key takeaways from that report, and thank you, Linda. Linda's going to be putting the links in the chat for each of these. So you're welcome to go to our website and download the report and read the whole thing or share it with other people you know who might be interested. But key takeaways from this report is that we see students sort of exemplifying a pattern of stretching outside their comfort zone. So using this curiosity that you have that drives you to study abroad, you'll find yourself when you're studying abroad in a number of situations that are stretching yourself a little bit from what your typical experience is used to being. Things you don't understand, things you're not comfortable with, things you're not used to. You find yourself stretching outside your comfort zone. You're using relationship building, whether it's building relationships with your classmates, with your host family, with your professors, with an internship supervisor, with the person who checks out your groceries in the place where you buy your food down the street. You're using relationships and building strength to connect across that difference in these different cultures and languages, to connect with people. That allows you to persist through that discomfort, persist through that stretching of your thinking, and figure out a solution, learn more, understand more, and sort of continue through that cycle ongoingly and repeatedly through your education abroad experience. And so what does that mean? It means that education abroad participants have these skills. They have curiosity. They are persistent and resilient. They are relationship builders and have strong interpersonal and communication skills, which are all things that we know from employers, we know from the World Economic Forum, are skills that are really valuable in the current workforce. And in fact, often employers find as gaps, as things that they're desiring to see more of among their employees. And so if you are a student or you recently were a student of study abroad, if you are on the job market and looking for new jobs, I think using this reflection pattern, this framework of stretch, connect, and persist might be a way for you to reflect on your own examples of how studying abroad helped you build skills that are applicable in the workplace, and reflect on how you might talk to an employer in an interview or describe this work in a cover letter in ways that draw the lines to connect the dots between having studied abroad and why that makes you an employee that can be valuable in a workplace and as a member of a team.
Amelia, can I or interrupt you for a second, because we have a comment in the Q&A that they can only see the intro slide.
Oh, we just have one slide for each study. So the slide you should all be seeing now is the Talent Advantage slide. Is that what everyone's seeing?
Okay. They don't have it. They don't have it. Okay.
They say yes. Yes. Okay. Thank you all very much. I appreciate you. Okay. I'm going to move on to the next study then. And it looks like I have control now. Thank you, Carolina, for fixing that. Oh, I clicked too far. It seems to not want to go backwards for me. It only goes forward. There we go. All right. Thank you for working with us on the technical difficulties. Okay, so the second study we did is called International Experiences as a Career Asset. And what we did is we worked with 4 universities in the United States with large business schools at public universities in different regions across the country. And we asked them to give us some data about their students who graduated in the last 5 years from their undergraduate programs. And we asked for information about whether those students studied abroad, where they studied abroad, for how long they studied abroad, as well as what was their starting salary in their first job after they graduated from college or university. And when we compared the students in that data set who studied abroad with the students who did not, we found that on average, the students who studied abroad earned about $4,000 more than the ones who didn't. That's a statistically significant difference. Moreover, when we looked at their grade point averages for these students and we split them out by grade point average, we see that that benefit for studying abroad is not just for the highest achieving students with the highest grades, but in fact persists across A level students, B level students, and C level students. So regardless of grade point average, we see a salary bump, a salary boost for students who studied abroad compared to students with the same grades who didn't study abroad. We also find that although there is some variability from different kinds of program formats, that any study abroad program still does better on the starting salary range in this data set than students who didn't study abroad at all, which I take to mean that there's not one perfect program or one magic formula for studying abroad for career success, but that in fact, it's the studying abroad itself that is a good thing. And that as a student, if you're struggling to find the right program that fits or to make it work with your course schedule or funding limitations, as we talked about in the poll or other things, that it's okay. You don't have to put the pressure on yourself to have exactly the right program and know all the different factors. Just finding a way to have an international experience and finding a way to make the most of it can be a really good thing. Now, I think it's important to mention that this is the specific average of a specific group of students. So please don't come back to me if you don't make $4,000 more than your colleagues when you graduate. It's averages and it's from a specific group of students. So these numbers obviously vary, but to me, the thing that's an important takeaway is that it's an indicator that students are going into the job market after study abroad, able to articulate in some way things about their skills and experiences that are allowing them to access higher paying jobs or negotiate higher starting salaries in those jobs than their classmates who don't have that experience. Yeah, Linda, you see.
I didn't know if you were going to move on to the next study, so I just wanted to interject 2 quick questions, maybe for clarification. You said that the students were all from the same group of students. Was there a certain career that was measured? Were there certain disciplines? I'm sure the report goes into more detail, but what were the disciplines that the students were studying and the jobs that they went into that were measured? That's my first question.
Yeah, so in this study, it's all students from the colleges of business, so business schools. There are different majors within business schools, of course, but they're all business majors. We do not know where they've landed in terms of their career placement, in terms of the kinds of careers they're working in. We did not collect that data for this study.
Okay, they were just able to report back that in their first job after. And I'm curious, if not Forum, but if you're aware if any other organization has done a longevity assessment, like if long-term the impact that the study abroad has had on earning.
We have a little more data for that in the new study we released today that I'll talk about in a few minutes. To my knowledge, we're the only ones that have done this kind of work so far. So, but we have a little bit longer time window. In 2 slides, I'll update you a little bit more on the rest of that.
And Linda, I want to clarify the salary bump, the increase in salary is comparing undergraduate business majors to their undergraduate business major peers. So it's not comparing business majors to other majors. It's business majors who studied abroad to their peers who did not.
Perfect. Thank you. Yep. Very helpful.
Thank you. All right. It doesn't look like we have any other questions, so I will move on to the next slide. Carolina, maybe I'll let you do that so that I don't mess it up again. Okay, in July and August of this year, the forum put out a link, maybe some of you saw it, to a survey that we were operating, inviting anyone who had studied abroad to answer a survey about how their study abroad experience perhaps impacted their career trajectory and success in a variety of ways. We had over 8,000 people from around the world respond to that survey, which as far as we know, is the biggest survey of education abroad alumni who have participated in a career-centric survey that's ever been published. And we got some really great results of it, some really great insights, because overwhelmingly, those of you who have had experiences studying abroad say that you believe that study abroad is really an important asset for students' career success. In other words, you would recommend it to other people if they're trying to have an opportunity for career success and looking for things to give them an advantage. We asked the alumni if they thought they developed important competencies or skills to help them in the workplace. And they said yes, overwhelmingly. I think about 94% of them said yes, they did. And the top skills that they identified as having developed through their education abroad experience were adaptability, communication and interpersonal skills, navigating difference, and creative problem solving, which might ring a bell because some of those things sound kind of like what we talked about in the first study I mentioned a few minutes ago. And also are, again, skills that come up at the top of competency lists that employers are looking for in surveys and polls from the World Economic Forum, for the National Association of Colleges and Employers, as well as many others. We also asked people to reflect on their careers so far and attribute what percentage of their career success they would say they can give thanks to education abroad for having helped them achieve that success. And on average, they said about 50%, which is pretty significant. I think it's even more interesting to think that 75% of respondents said at least 24% or more of their success is attributable to study abroad. Because when you think about it, among our survey respondents, most of them studied abroad for 1 semester or less. So that's maybe about 12% of their undergraduate education or less, which means that even people on the low end of our responses in this question are still reporting that they think study abroad was responsible for a lot more of their career success than the amount of time they actually spent on it as a proportion of their college education. And it means that education abroad participation, in their view, has a really positively disproportionate impact on their career success. And so if you haven't studied abroad yet and you're thinking about it, I think that's a really great indicator, a really great encouragement to think that there's a lot you can do, there's a lot you can leverage from an education abroad experience to have success in your career and to find your pathway. I'm going to pause because I see a couple questions in the chat. Give me a second to read them. Okay, this is a follow-up question to the salary study. I'm curious if the results apply to any duration of study abroad, like a semester or yearly, or even for short terms like spring break. Yes, the answer is that yes. So the average, the difference, so I cited that 4,000 number is the average overall for the whole data set for all study abroad students compared to all non-study abroad students. But we do see, if we break it out by length of study or length of program, also type of program. So was it an internship program or was it a faculty-led short-term program? We still see that regardless of program format, there are still benefits in the salary to have studied abroad compared to those students who did not. So yes, that's the answer to that question. Thanks for that question, Green. I see another question on that study. What led you to focus on business schools? Yeah, great question, Moto. Business schools in the United States and around the world, I think for the most part, for their rankings, report data around job placement for their students' first destinations for employment after graduation. And so business schools actively collect from their alumni information about how long it takes them to get a job after graduation and what is their starting base salary in those jobs. Other schools and departments of colleges and universities do not do this in a widespread manner. Some of them might, or they might attempt to, but we know that at business schools, Melissa, as she mentioned earlier, has a background in business schools and knows them very well. We know that they have good data. They have better data than most other departments and schools on a university campus, essentially. And so we thought it was a good place to start to look into this data. We'd be happy, and we are exploring the possibility of doing this work on a broader scale in the future, and to have data from other departments and schools and majors. We're just working on trying to figure out where to find those numbers, because they are a lot harder to get a hold of outside of business schools. Go ahead, Melissa.
Yeah, thank you, Amelia. I was just going to say, for those of you who are working at institutions of higher ed, or in the ed abroad field, the first step might be going to your business school and asking them how do they collect the data, right? How do they get that? How do they ensure that what they're reporting for rankings or for accreditation is accurate? Because I know firsthand that it takes business schools a lot of effort to get that data, but knowing how they do it might be useful to people who are in other academic disciplines, or maybe even the Central Education Abroad office.
All right. Thank you. We can move on to the next and last study that I'm going to share with you today. This is hot off the presses. We just published it this morning. You are some of the first people that are going to learn about it. And we're very excited to share. And Linda, this is where I'm going to answer some of your questions, sort of, a little bit at least anyway. So we worked with a company called Lightcast, which is a labor market statistics and economics firm who does a lot of economic impact research, especially for the higher education sector. And we asked some questions around the impacts at the individual level for employees, for employers, as well as at the national level across the United States, to understand more about the economic and career impacts of education abroad, using primarily LinkedIn profile data and job advertisements and listings. What we found are a few interesting things. Again, this report also has a lot more than I can cover in the few minutes we have left, so feel free to read it, and feel free to reach out to me with other questions afterwards. But I think some of the most interesting highlights that I'd like to share with you today are, first, that we're seeing study abroad as an increasingly prominent signal in the U.S. labor market. What do we mean by this? We mean that when we look across all the LinkedIn profiles, millions and millions, tens of millions of LinkedIn profiles that they have in the data set, and we break it down in 5-year increments. So people who graduated from college in the 1990s, in the early 2000s, and in the last 5 years, we break it down in increments. We see that there's a higher proportion of people more recently mentioning study abroad on their LinkedIn profiles than those people who studied abroad or who went to college many years ago. We think this is a good thing, and we think it's an important thing to communicate to employers, because in the history of the workforce, it's always been a small proportion of people who have studied abroad compared to the larger workforce. And so even if we know education abroad is a good competency development tool to prepare people for the workforce, it's not necessarily that useful when you have to recruit lots of people and there's only a small subset of them that have studied abroad on their resume. And so we want to make sure that recruiters and employers understand that they're seeing more students with study abroad on their resumes. They're going to keep seeing more students with study abroad on their resumes. And it's helpful to know what that means and what a student who has studied abroad brings to their workplace when they join their team as an employee. And so that's an encouraging signal and a piece of information we want to get out to students and to employers and to people working at colleges and universities who are helping connect students with employers after graduation. Here's the answer to your question, Linda. We did look at in their first 3 years after graduation, so a little bit longer timeline than just the first destination in our other study. And this is across all majors. So everyone in our data set, all majors working in all kinds of jobs. We do also see a salary premium for study abroad students compared to people in the data set with similar backgrounds, similar educations, but who did not study abroad. The difference is a little lower. It's about 1,000 on average globally for all fields. But we do see that salary premium also at the 3-year mark for education abroad participation. And we worked with LICAS to figure out sort of a formula essentially to convert what that means in terms of that salary premium, that extra money study abroad students make compared to the people who didn't study abroad. What does that mean for the US economy? And what it means is that in the current US economy, the current education abroad participants are contributing about $1.8 billion to the US economy, or that's the equivalent of about 17,000 jobs. So additional money, additional jobs that are in the economy because of this salary bump, because of this increased economic benefit we see for education abroad participation compared to students who don't study abroad. Some other highlights, and there's more of this in the report if you read it, relate to particular sectors of students. And so we looked at the LinkedIn profiles to look at people's career trajectories. We see higher rates of elevation to management among people in IT, in education, in healthcare, and in social assistance industries. We see higher rates of entrepreneurship among people in IT and education sectors who studied abroad compared to those who didn't in those same sectors. And we see higher rates of retention, meaning that at the 3 and 5 year marks, people are still working at the same employer as opposed to job hopping. If they studied abroad, they're more likely to stay longer in the healthcare and social assistance industry. So as a benefit to employers to know that when you're investing in recruiting an employee, they're going to stick with you for a long time. They're going to maybe be advanced to management. These are all good indicators that education abroad makes good employees and makes the kind of employees that employers are looking for. I'll pause for any questions on this before we move to the big picture.
Not a question, more just a comment of how exciting it is to see this, and huge kudos to the forum for pulling this information together. I think it's going to be very helpful for practitioners to see this who are providing study abroad opportunities to also continue to help make the case for it. It seems extremely helpful for higher ed institutions to continue to prioritize study abroad. And it also seems obviously critical for the employers to get their hands on this. So I see you say here, this report is called The Value of Education Abroad to Employees and Employers. And I'm curious about your distribution plan to get this report into the hands of employers that, may or may not really be aware of the difference that education abroad makes in a potential candidate.
Yeah, I think I'm going to let Melissa jump in and help answer this one.
Yeah, thank you, Amelia, and Linda. Thank you for the question. What we have figured out, and some recent reports confirm this, is that employers don't know that the skills that they're looking for are present in people who have studied abroad. Maybe they know that if they have identified people within their organizations who have this in common, but I think that is very, very rare. And many of the employers with whom I've spoken, they don't ask, even if they see study abroad on a student's resume, they don't necessarily ask the student about it. And when they do, the student often does not or is not able to articulate the skills that they gained that are applicable to the job for which they're applying. And so what we need to do now that the research phase of the Career Catalyst campaign is almost over, there are a few more reports to come out, but the major research studies have done, and Amelia is finally going to get to take some days off over the holidays, thank goodness, because she has more than earned them. But our next job is to get this data in front of policymakers, campus leadership, and the private sector in particular. And so we are planning an event in Washington, D.C., where we will be talking to members of Congress about this research and about the important economic impact that education abroad has. We will be convening think tanks within different states to bring together ed abroad professionals, state offices of economic development, and the business community to say, to share the data, but more importantly, what are you going to do about it, right? Like, now that we know that there's this economic benefit and there's this, it's not just economic, right? It's elevation to management, it's entrepreneurship, it's retention. It's not just the salary bump we're talking about, but what can you do if you are the state of Pennsylvania or the state of Ohio or an office outside the U.S.? Like, how can you make these opportunities available to more students so that we can have even more economic impact? And I think, we talk a lot about the global economy and our interdependence upon each other. Salary and career impact is just one of the benefits. I think for the students who are in the room, for you to understand that you shouldn't let anybody tell you who's a friend, who's an enemy, who you should be afraid of, where you are going to be welcome in the world, where you're not going to be welcome. Go out and see it for yourself, right? Make your own decisions, form those relationships, and understand some of the biggest challenges that we face as a planet are only going to be solved if we can understand how those same challenges are affecting other people and what ideas they have for solving them, right? I'm thinking back to COVID-19 and the way that the scientific community came together to focus on a vaccine and find a cure. Right? Like, the only way that we're going to solve climate change, for example, is if we work together. So, I think all of the time, energy, and work that we have done to talk about careers is super important. But it's certainly not the only benefit. What's exciting to me about this research is, it's the first time we've had this data available to talk about. So for a long time, we've been able to tell students about the intercultural competence and the communication skills and all of the other things that they're going to benefit from when they study abroad. But now we can actually also go and say, and it's going to pay, it's going to pay back to you in terms of your career. So we have lots of plans, Linda, to go back to your question. We are talking to audiences everywhere and anywhere. And, I know at the end of the presentation, we're going to share our LinkedIn contact information for people in the audience who have connections in the business community and the private sector. We would love to hear your ideas of how to get this information in front of your colleagues and your network that way.
All right. Thank you so much, Melissa. I know you have a summary slide, Amelia, and then there may be one or two more questions as we're approaching the end of our time. So we'll let you summarize.
Yes. While Melissa's talking, I was answering some questions in the Q&A. So if you typed an answer back and I wrote you an answer, thank you for your questions. So just a summary, because that's a lot of data, a lot of different kinds of methods and studies. So what do we need? What do we think of all of this together? What does it mean together? I think what we're taking away from this at the forum when we look at these research studies that we've been working on this year, we knew before, and we reinforced in new and exciting and updated ways how education abroad can help students develop in-demand, work-ready skills that are relevant to the current and future job market and to our global economy. And we have indicators from a lot of different metrics and methods that I've shared with you today that these skills and experiences can be leveraged in favor of career success across people's different career stages. So it helps students choose vocational and career paths and choices. It helps students get their first job. It leads to higher salaries in early job career. It leads to advancement, and people attribute a lot of their overall success to having studied abroad. And these benefits are observed across a variety of programs and durations. There's no one perfect magic formula. there's a lot of ways you can get to these benefits by studying abroad in places and on programs that interest you and work for your educational plan and your budget. But there may be ways that students and employers and all of us are still not connecting all the dots about how these things relate in order for students to leverage this even better in their careers, and in order for recruiters and employers to leverage this better in their recruiting to bring in a workforce that is working well for them and is able to excel in their workplace. And so that's why we're doing this research. It's why we're doing presentations like this at the forum, to spread the word, to build the consciousness that people have about this, and to help everyone understand better how these things are interconnected so that we can, raise all boats and help everyone have more success economically, career-wise, and just in general. So thanks for listening, and thanks for all your great questions.
Thank you so much, Amelia. I mean, I know for me, I'm sold, right? I think the case for study abroad has been made very strongly yet again this evening with this discussion. And I like what you highlighted, Melissa, that previously, it was very clear, and we continue to make it very clear. And this is one of AFS's objectives, is to talk about the skills, right? The skill building that students gain from study abroad and that need in the future workplace. But you've also made this career and economic case for it. And I think that can be really helpful so that individuals just have more in their toolbox when they need to speak about the benefits of it all. So I think that's super. I know that when we go back to the poll that we asked our audience members, what are their challenges? The one that came up, and we didn't really have much time to discuss tonight, is funding, right? And so I don't know if, maybe in a future, I think this is going to be a future webinar that we're going to have to discuss the funding options. I know part of your objective with this is to show this importance to potential funders, to institutions that can also get funding. The case has been made, I would say, nonetheless. So I don't know if either one of you have any final remarks. Otherwise, we do just have a couple closing slides that I'd like to go through as far as like filling out a survey, et cetera. But any final remarks you would like to make, either Melissa or Amelia?
Just to thank you again, Linda, for having us. I think we want to share this data. We are open to people's ideas for how to share it, and for the folks on the call who are international educators, to thank them. It's really hard work. It's a really tough environment right now, but the work that you're doing makes a tremendous difference in students' lives. And so we just want to say thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. There's the contact information for both Melissa and Amelia on the screen on LinkedIn. And then we'll advance to the next slide, Carolina, and we'll share with our audience members that they will, upon completion of this webinar, be eligible to receive a digital badge acknowledging their participation. So that will come to you from a link from Credly. So go ahead and accept that. And we encourage you to put that on your socials so that you can share that you participated in yet another AFS activity. We also would appreciate your feedback on this webinar and all of our webinar series this week so that we can improve and acknowledge the hard work. So there is both a link and also a QR code. International Ed Week is not quite over yet. We still have 3 remaining content sessions. So bright and early Western Hemisphere, US side morning, we will have a session on how educators can cultivate global citizenship values. It's going to be a workshop style. So that one will be more interactive with an educator. And then we also have a panel of students who will be speaking on Friday about Gen Z and what global education means to them. So come if you are a Gen Z or if you work with Gen Z and would like to get their insights. We also will be hosting a special panel for community colleges and access to global competence learning. And then I think last but not least, we have a booth. That's tomorrow. So if you're interested in learning more about AFS programs specifically, please come to that booth. There will be information about some resources and scholarships and virtual exchange programs and study abroad as well. So that is tomorrow. We also have our youth assembly, which takes place every August. And next year, it will be taking place in Geneva, Switzerland for the first time. Usually we're in New York, but in an attempt to include more of our global peers from around the world, we are going to host it in Geneva, Switzerland next year because we believe that, and we're aware that there can be barriers in coming to the US for lots of individuals. And so we're going to welcome you to Geneva next year. And then the last slide I think we have are a series of events that Forum is putting on next year. And let's see if we can click to that one. There it is. Lots of activities that Melissa and Amelia will be hosting, and they encourage you to check those out. We'll be sharing the recording of this event also along with these slide resources. So thank you again, one and all. Thank you so much to Melissa and Amelia. I know that I'm very impressed by all the work that you've pulled together and think that this is definitely a service for the industry. And so we thank you on behalf of all of us, educators, international education providers, students. We appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Linda. Thanks for having us.
Have a great evening and a great day, everybody. See you next time.